Welcome to Typecasting, where we're typing our favorite fictional characters on the Enneagram and taking on pop culture by the numbers.
You could have been anywhere in the world tonight, but you're here with us in Typecasting City. Are you ready for a podcast episode?
The greatest city in the world, Typecast City.
It was supposed to be a cabinet battle reference, but
I know, that
don't
was good. No, I heard it.
Thank you.
I was just trying to do like another riff for
I promise. I don't listen to any of the songs, so I'm so excited to be talking about Hamilton, and I love Hamilton, but unless I'm listening all the way through, I have never listened to like the cabinet battles on their own. The only songs I listen to, and I was thinking about this because I was prepping for tonight's episode, are the ones about the women, basically. And I was thinking,
good.
I don't know if you're familiar. I'm a Swiftie, and Taylor Swift, when she released Folklore, released like mini EPs of like different collections of the songs in different orders, and she called them chapters and like gave them their different names. And I was like, I think you could make a very cohesive story out of just like start with like Schuyler sisters and like just going through like helpless, satisfied, say no to this, and like cut out all the men. And that is like my like perfect Hamilton chapter.
That's amazing. I love that. I love that idea.
That's my like dream. Like if you need to condense it, just keep it focused on the women. And we mentioned last week that we might be talking about the hero of the show today. And I think her name is Eliza Schuyler. So that's my opinion, the hero of the show.
Spoiler alert. Yeah. That is who I thought you were talking about. And then I randomly had a panic just a second ago being like, wait, what if he's talking about Angelica? But I thought you were probably talking about Eliza. Because she is a hero, and we do love her, and we're going to talk about her first. But first, I need to introduce Lucas. He would never throw away his shot. History has his eyes on this man right here, your host, Lucas Graydon. It's so easy. You just have to say lines from the show.
Just you wait. That's your co-host, Mirjana Tumatua, who's the oldest and the wittiest, and the stories that she has to tell are incredulous.
Incredulous?
I wasn't going to say insidious. I had to find a like similar synonym, or not a synonym, a similarly syllabled word on pretty short notice. I wrote that right before we started. So
sure. We have had this plan for like 2 weeks, but I get it. Yeah, I am the oldest of the two of us and of my siblings, and I take so much pride in it. I was just talking to someone who was also the oldest, and they were like, yeah, like rolled their eyes at themselves, and I was like, what? It's not your pride and joy?
That's kind of how I feel. Like I'm the eldest, and I feel like my parents, like the younger children are always the favorites, you know?
Yeah, but you're the oldest. I hope I'm not like you're doing sibling erasure, but of the oldest of two, I'm like, okay, well, there's an oldest and a youngest. I feel like I'm 4. So like each person, it's like a very key to your identity, because the only way you can keep anyone like straight, you know, like who's who.
I see.
When there's like the Matua clan pops in. Anyway, I'm so excited to talk about Hamilton again. Like this is the first, like last week was the first week. This is the first like series that I feel that I am just so excited for, and you're the me.
I will say, and I mentioned this last week, like these are the characters that I am excited about. Like this was the episode. All of my prep last week, I was just accidentally typing these characters instead because they're the ones that I think about when I listen through the show. So I'm also super excited. I will introduce our very first character for the week, Eliza Schuyler, later Eliza Hamilton. I wasn't sure how to like refer to her, so we just have it. We have it both ways. She is one of Hamilton's love interests, his main love interest.
Okay, you should say his wife.
His wife. It was a list. I was building to it. And she is also the middle child of the three Schuyler sisters, and she is a very loving and supportive wife. She's always there for Alexander, and she really wants to be a part of his life and a part of his story. She asks early on in their marriage to be a part of the narrative that historians will write someday. And we then see her as we kind of go through the show over the course of a few years. She gives birth to Philip, and then Alexander cheats on her, and she sings one of the best songs in the whole show. Speaking of burn, real quick tangent before we get into typing, Eliza. Have you heard First Burn, the like original?
Yes, gorgeous.
It's a little like angrier and darker than the burn that ended up in the show, but it is a good like get pumped up, like get in your feelings song. I love First Burn. I just had to.
No, I think so too. I haven't listened to it in a minute. I remember when it got like leaked on SoundCloud. SoundCloud's still a thing.
That just reminded me, speaking of like SoundCloud.
What was that noise?
Did I sound a little possessed on my inhale there?
Yeah.
Do the SoundCloud recordings of Lin-Manuel, like the demos of the songs where he's singing?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Have you not heard them? He's like, oh, we were married that night. I looked up to the sky.
Why is your Lin-Manuel Miranda the same as your Taylor? That's the same voice that you use when you're trying to be Taylor Swift, though, which is funny. Like, I thought, I was like, what Taylor Swift song is that?
I promise you that is exactly, maybe not exactly, but that is exactly what I hear when I listen to it. Was like all over TikTok last summer was the demo.
I must have missed it, honestly. That is so funny. Well, it is. Okay, tell me about Lizzie, our girl Liza.
Yes, so she sings Burn, but then we do see after she and Alexander go through the tragedy of losing their son that they do come back together, and she learns to forgive him. And then literally I was listening to Who Lives, Who Dies, Who Tells Your Story to prep for this episode, and I cannot listen to that song without crying because she makes it her personal mission to tell the story of the founding fathers and the people who fought alongside Alexander and to tell his story. She starts an orphanage. She is just, oh my gosh, she's incredible.
I know.
And her capacity for forgiveness, but then like her drive and her like mission to like make sure that Alexander is remembered is so like heartwarming and bittersweet, and just, I love her so much. I'm very interested. I think I feel good about where I landed on her, but I'm very interested to hear what you have to say. What type do you think she is?
I am like sure that we're on the same page. She's a 2-wing 3. She loves others very well. You see how naturally the role of mother comes to her when she has Philip, and we don't really get to see her. I know, like in real life, they have like a million kids, but in the show, I think they only have 2. And they only refer to the daughter. We never get to see her. And she is so lovely, and she's so kind, and the way others speak about her, I think it, like, unlike anything else in this show, we get to just see that how much they love her and know how like have a tendency to explain her as very soft. I don't know if she isn't. We see that she isn't. She's sensitive and strong. But how they speak about her, I think of like Angelica, the whole satisfied number, and just saying like she would do anything for me. She loves me well. She does all these things, and she deserves to be happy. And I think that's how a lot of us think about 2s. And I think that is how that she is a 2, and we see it in how she begs him to come home and just be with her, and like literally just to be his wife is enough. Like Alexander does not have to do anything else but to show up for her, and he still falls short. And I think we see a lot of that anger, very like righteously so, but we see a lot of that anger that the 2 can sometimes hold as well when people don't love them as well as they can love others. What do you think, Lucas?
Well, I wrote down, actually, you mentioned like satisfied. I wrote down a lot of lyrics and like quotes for this episode. And one of them, speaking of satisfied, is when she says,
I know my sister like I know my own mind. You will never find anyone as trusting or
just yours kind.
If I tell her that I love him, she'd be silent. And if I told her that I loved him, she'd be silently resigned. He would be mine. She would say I'm fine, but she'd be lying. Like, which is all to say.
Such a 2.
Yes, I agree. I do think she's a 2. Like she has that like selflessness about her. And then also, as I was listening through more of their songs, she talked, and like you said, I relish being your wife. And she says in the song, like, that would be enough. She says, and I could be enough. And I think that as Alexander grows and becomes more successful, she feels him like slipping away, and she needs to be needed by him, and she needs to be, she wants to be enough for him, and she's constantly saying like, I can be enough, our family, like this can be enough. She just wants to be enough for him, and I think she wants to be needed by him in a way that is also very like indicative of the type 2 and that desire to be needed and to be wanted and to be loved. And oh my gosh, I love her so much. And then I think also I mentioned like her capacity for forgiveness and the way that she like takes her time to like step away and like withdraw after she's been hurt, but then she comes back to Alexander and like they live out the rest of their lives together. And then the way that she
when they say like,
it's quiet uptown.
Forgiveness. Can you imagine forgiveness? Can you imagine if you see him in the street, walking by your side, talking by your side, have pity. They are going through the unimaginable.
I feel like that is so, like, not many types in the Enneagram can forgive to the extent that I believe that the 2s can. Like, they are willing. I think of that quote, I think it's like from The Office, but it's like, I'm willing to be hurt again. Like, what were you going to say, though? I interrupted.
I was going to say, no, yeah. And the way that she dedicates the rest of her life to the people that she knew and to like, to helping the legacy of others. Like she talks a little bit about like legacy, but it's never in terms of her legacy. It's about being a part of the story that she knows is going to be written about Alexander someday. And then after he dies, she knows that like all he cared about was the way that he was going to be remembered. And she like dedicates the rest of her life to his mission and to his goal in the way that she like, and I know we were just talking about this, I think last week, like she raises funds in DC for the Washington Monument, and she speaks out against slavery, and she builds the orphanage. Like her whole life, she like, and her future, like she lives another 50 years. Listen, this song.
You're literally
just
singing
so
the song.
But
It's so gorgeous.
all of these things, and like her life's work is dedicated to others. Like she is so other-centered and so like committed to helping the memory of the people that she loves. It like, I think is just such a beautiful image of the type 2.
Absolutely. And her nation. Like, I think she thinks of the nation in a very literal sense of a group of people, right? And like, how lucky are we to be alive right now? Like, she says that again and again, and how excited she is to be a part of history. And I think when she's talking about the city or the nation or what America is going to be, she tends to see the people of it. And like, I don't even think Alexander could have thought of the orphanage to be like in his memory. I'm getting chills. The fact that he was an orphan and he forgot that about himself and forgot that part of his identity, that like originally the reason he fell for Eliza, like she was his whole family, and he kind of got so focused on other things that were going on that she thought his legacy, she knew him so well that to love him best and love his legacy best, even if he didn't think of it, was to have the orphanage. What? Like, and I think like Hamilton does such a good job of like reminding us of people of the history of still people, you know, like in humans with flesh and stories and complications. And it's just so beautifully done. And Eliza is just like, wow. She's the reason like Lucas thought he was a 2 because she seems so
Literally.
perfect.
Yes, I was very much like, doesn't it just, it's so hard being a 2 because I just love people too well. Like when I thought I was, that was a good like 3 months of me mistyping. It's hey, Enneagram is a journey, like finding that spot. But I wish I was a 2. Actually, it's funny because I'm going to get to another character that I'm like, I wish this character was a certain type, but just because then I can identify with them. But that is so true about Eliza.
Okay. Well, Eliza has a favorite person in the world, and I'd love to talk about her if I may.
Please. I have lots of questions. I'm lost for her. So who are we talking about next?
Well, we're talking about Angelica Schuyler. And Angelica is the oldest of the 3 Schuyler sisters. Angelica is incredibly driven. She has her own relationship that borders on promiscuous scandal with her brother-in-law, Alexander. The main point that we drive home is that she's just never satisfied. She always wants more. She wants to be bigger, better, greater. And she wants that of the world around her as well. Angelica is a good sister. And I think I think she's a complicated sister because there's a couple times where she's definitely loving her brother-in-law too much. But overall, her sister Eliza is the most important to her. And I think to like almost a fault because a lot of the complications that come further, like if she just stood up for who she wanted sooner, it might have been a little different. I'm going to like preface this with I've read a couple books on Angelica Schuyler in the last couple of years, and I have some feelings outside of Hamilton. So if I bring those in, you got to like rein me in because I made a note to myself to like only talk about the musical, but sometimes it gets a little muddled. So
totally.
Lucas, what do you think what do you think her number is?
With your introduction, I think I can guess what number you think she is, which is probably the number that I'm most attached to as well. Maybe I'm totally off base. So I have 5 numbers written down, which is more than half of the Enneagram. However, one of them I like backed away from. So
it's going to be the one I think she is.
Probably. So here's my journey. Come with me, buckle up. First of all was the 3. She's a natural leader. And the thing that got me about the 3 is she is very self-aware and she's very attuned to the way that the world sees her. When she talks in Satisfied and when she decides to introduce Alexander to Eliza, she says, I'm a girl in a world in which my only job is to marry rich. And she is so like, she realizes 3 fundamental truths at the exact same time. And she also says, he's after me because I'm a Schuyler sister. Like she's able to read Alexander immediately. She knows that he's lying about where he came from. And she's so attuned to him and like very like aware of other people and what they might be hiding or not totally sharing. Like she runs the social season. I see a lot of 3 also in the way that she lets her social place and like her place in society dictate and like take away the love of her life. She like puts her place in society above her own like wants and desires and love. That's where I thought maybe 3. However, there's also this level of selflessness in like giving Alexander to Eliza that I thought maybe 2, and I wrote down the type 2.
Okay.
Then I also wrote down the type 1 because she does what's right at the expense of what she wants. Like she cares very much about like what is right and what is wrong. And what's right is that she marries a man with status and like provides for her family, things like that. And so I thought maybe a 1. Then the last one that I think this is the one that I'm most torn between with the 3 is actually the type 5, because she talks a lot about connecting with Alexander on an intellectual level. She says, so this is what it feels like to match wits with someone at your level. Like that, she immediately falls in love with Alexander's brain and like with his mind. And later, when they're writing letters back and forth, she says there's no one who can match you for turn of phrase. Like that is the one thing that she points to with her new husband and comparing him to Alexander. And then you also have like her fixating and like on the details of like the comma.
In a letter I received from you 2 weeks ago, I noticed a comma in the middle of a phrase. It changed the meaning. Did you intend this? One stroke and you've consumed my waking days. It says, my dearest Angelica. With a comma after dearest, you've written my dearest Angelica.
And like, what does this comma mean? Like, she's very like detail oriented and observant. And so I'm like, okay, maybe she's a type 5. And then finally, and this is the one that I'm talked myself out of, is the type 4, because her song is satisfied. Her song is satisfied, and she will never be satisfied. And 4s are so attuned to like lack and want and never being satisfied. And I was like, maybe she's a 4. And then what I wrote is 4s want to be Angelica, but I don't think Angelica is a 4. Like, because Angelica is in this like super dramatic, like she's married, or she's like, her brother-in-law is the love of her life, and she's in this tortured Romeo and Juliet where she can never fully be with him, but she like keeps his eyes in her life. And I'm like, that is so dramatic and like melancholy and heartbreaking that like 4s think they are Angelica, but I don't think that like Angelica is a 4.
That is
we have
so
come to a
interesting.
Stop. That is my journey.
Holy cow. Okay. Wow. I was like 8, one and done. I thought she was 8. I was like, she's never satisfied. She fights for justice. She has that anger. That's the part of her like never being satisfied. But honestly, you just took me on a journey of like things I had not even considered. Like I thought we weren't even going to get to be able to talk about Angelica. So I'm like excited for this discussion. Wow, that were so many. What? Okay, let's just like, can I just hear? So thinking about the 8, thinking of all, because you obviously thought about this and were in your head a lot on this one. Is there any part of you that, because I thought maybe she was an 8 wing 9, so she didn't want to rock the boat. She felt this sense of duty, what she thought was right. And like her job of, like you said, was to marry rich. So she was being strategic about that. That's what she was focused on. But she has that wing 9 of like letting her sister have it, keeping the peace, never like rocking the boat, only talking about the comma, but not like straight up like having an affair with him in this musical. And so that's why I thought she was an 8 wing 9, and I was like feeling really good about it. I would love to hear your thoughts now that because you've obviously been all over the map, and I was kind of convinced, but like 3 different times. So now I'm way more lost than I was.
So I thought about the 8. I honestly think the reason I was drawn away from the 8 and the 1 a little bit is the fact I was like, I don't think an 8 would let Alexander go. Like, I think 8s have really big feelings, and they are like very driven to get what they want. And like, I think in my head, I think that maybe, I don't think I gave it a ton of thought, because I was like, okay, 8, I honestly think she would go for what she wanted, and she would like fight for it, because like when an 8 like cares and fights for someone, like they will not let anything get in their way. I kind of see it, but I honestly think like, if I were to rank them, I would put 8 at 3rd. Like, as you like introduce it and I like hear your argument of my numbers, I like slot it in there, but I don't think it's the one that I'm most convinced by.
Are you most convinced of the 3? Because I think your argument for the 3 made the most sense.
I'm thinking about the 3 as like maybe my number 1. However, I know we talked last week about how Alexander as an 8 goes to 5 in stress. The 5 goes to 8 in strength. So like there's a part of me that's like, maybe she's a 5 who goes to 8 in strength and in growth. So there's a part of me that sees maybe a fuller picture on the type 5, but I also agree, like my first instinct, my first hunch, I think where I have like my like strongest foothold is in the type 3. What do you think about like the 3 or the 5?
I think your argument for the 3 makes the most sense. Like, she is a chameleon. She's doing what she needs to do. I think like the only thing that is confusing to me is she is so happy to have someone on her level. She's not competitive. That's the only thing that I'm like, is she a 3? Because I feel like if she met Alexander, she'd be like, all right, let's do this. Or even with Eliza, be a little more. But like maybe 3-wing 2, and then 2 like calms her down into like nurturing, like giving her sister that love. But I feel that's the only thing that stops me from the 3 being like hands down, because especially like when she's like walking around town, she's all about social status. It's a game to her, which also honestly makes me think of the 5. Like the fact that she's like, this is my job, I'm going to do it well. And it's calculated, how calculated it all is.
And I think to the 3 and the 5, like we talked a little bit with back with Glee, 3s being pragmatists and 3s being very calculated and like looking at their best course of action and like doing what it takes. And I think that taking a step back and realizing like, this is my job, the best way I can provide for my family and be successful is to marry a rich man. So I cannot marry Alexander, and I'm going to put like that ahead. I could see as a 3, but also I do like see the 5 in her trips to the city to like go find somebody. Like she's looking for a mind at work.
I'm looking for a mind at work. I'm looking for a mind at work.
Like that is what she's looking for, is somebody to like discuss ideas and debate and like engage in intellectual conversation and thought. And so I think that's all like I just noticed these like threads and this pattern of like thought and like intellectualism and discussion and debate with her, that like like for her to find somebody that she can engage in, like someone at her level, is electrifying. Mm-hmm. It's Ben Franklin with a key and a kite. Like
you see it, right?
and so that is like why I was like, maybe she is a 5. I would say to your competitiveness point with the 3, I think that she gets a thrill from finding somebody at her level, similar to an 8. Like 8s are challengers, but they do like that back and forth. Yeah. I think that maybe with Alexander, she likes that back and forth if she's the 3.
I know.
I don't know.
You know what? I think I'm convinced of the 5.
It's kind of like
I think the 5-wing 4 makes sense. Mm-hmm. I think that like, because I have also seen those like Instagram drawings that are coming for our brand that are like like all the characters. I feel like they're all 8s or maybe 3s, but I think like we're not giving the 5 enough credit here. And I think she's a 5 who's like, and she's also, that's why she's so dramatic with the 4. Right. And she's like incredibly empathetic with her sister. And so I think that's totally what it is. I think I'm sold on like,
oh my gosh,
a 5 who maybe is a Scorpio. I don't really know astrology, but
I love it.
I just know a Scorpio. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm into it. Let's do it.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Incredible. Like it kind of came late in the game for me, but
we're shaking our hands virtually.
Oh, I love it.
I love it too.
I have the completionist in me did want to type all 3 Schuyler sisters. I know we have very little information about Peggy, but
I think we can give her a 6-wing 7.
I love it.
You're here for it? She's worried the whole time?
I was thinking the 9, but like a 9-wing 1.
No, because she's like, Daddy said not to go downtown.
Exactly. She doesn't want to like rock the boat. She doesn't want to do the wrong thing.
But she's nervous. So I'm like, she's anxious.
But
she's doing it anyway. So she's like with her sister, so she feels safe. I kind of hear what is the other thing? Maybe 9
with the wing 1 and like doing what's right. And
yeah.
I see the wing 1 more than I see the wing 7.
I overcorrected on the 9s. There's a lot of 9s out there. Yeah, I kind of. Tell us in the comment. Let's do it. Let's do an Instagram poll.
Yes. I love it.
All right.
Okay.
Let's do an Instagram poll between 9 and 6.
We're not sure. We're leaving it to you all. Yep.
Because we also don't know like what part of, because she could be in stress, so she's going to her, like we don't know enough about like her story.
That's true. Like which way is she moving on the arrows? So who are we talking about next? And this is a genuine question because I think we have like a weird list of characters this week.
Okay, so our first character, a little wonky, really excited to do this. This is our first time in season 2 doing 4 characters, so really excited. Really, we just did Peggy as well, kind of. So, like,
yeah, and I do also have notes on. I do also have notes on some of Alexander's pals, so we'll see what happens.
I'm very excited for that. Well, the first one of Alexander Pales that is actually, scripted for this week is Marquis de Lafayette. And he is a French mercenary who's fighting in the Revolutionary War alongside Alexander and George Washington. And he is there for the sole purpose of kicking some butt. He is an incredible mercenary, incredible soldier, intelligent mind, as well as just like all the physical attributes you need to be a good soldier. And there are towns named for him across the world. Actually, there are 2 Lafayettes. I don't know who. Again, I'm doing the history thing. Keep it Hamilton, Mersh. So he's a great character. He's a good friend, and he's also, I feel like, a fan favorite. Personally, like, of the men who are appreciating the show. Until the movie came out, I think Lafayette was everyone's favorite, and then we got to see how Anthony Ramos put John Lawrence to life, and then people were like Lawrence stand all of a sudden. But that's why we're talking about Lafayette, and I'm so excited to see, since we're doing both sides of his character. Act 1 we're doing first, we'll talk about him. I'm excited to see if you like how they play together.
Yeah. I'm gonna preface this by saying I have very weak opinions about both of Daveed Diggs' characters. Lafayette,
Really?
I have written down as a 3. And that's about all I have to say. I mean, I was trying to listen for more of him, and I should have paid more attention to his, like, he's got the big raps and guns and ships that everyone likes to prove that they can do. I will not pretend to be able to do the guns and ships rap, but I was listening to his like one line, his introductory like verse in Aaron Burr, Sir, when we meet Lafayette and Mulligan and Lawrence and
Mon ami, je m'appelle Lafayette, the Lancelot of the revolutionary set. I came from afar just to say bonsoir to the king, car c'est toi who is the best, c'est moi.
He is just very self-assured, very confident, and he has like that charisma about him that I think is very type 3. I could also see, and I'm not sure how this will land with you, but he kind of reminds me of our conversation about Thor, who like Thor loves like his battles and his adventures so much, and he like just ekes so much like joy out of life that I wonder like maybe he's a 7. But you know what? I think as soon as you tell me what number you think he is, I'm going to say, yes, you're totally right, because I don't have very strong opinions about Lafayette.
I actually love the idea of him being a 7. I think it takes a certain type of person, though, to be able to fight for a nation that's not theirs. And I think like to such the extent that he does. And the fact that he believes in revolution, he believes in power, and mostly because of like France, because of what's happening in his home country and what he can do. I think he sees this as an opportunity to level up. And I think he's a 3 as well. I feel okay, like, just saying that, like, because you're right. We don't really get to see a ton of who his character is. He's a good friend. He's very competitive, incredibly strategic. And again, when I'm saying, like, I think my main point was that he is above all out, like, he's fighting for another country and doing an incredible job at it. He's competitive. He loves to have a good time with his friends. We see him like a little slurped, as we like to say at Butler University, more than once. And I think he's a 3. And I feel comfortable, like, just like, we can shake hands on that. Like, probably a 3 wing too.
I did write down wing 2. However,
okay.
saying the point about like fighting for another country and like the commitment to like the idea of revolution makes me wonder about like the 8 or the 1, because they're very justice oriented, and like 1 specifically are idealists and perfectionists in a lot of ways. And so I thought that's where you were going with it, but if you are good with the 3, then I'm good with the 3.
Let's do it. High five. Because we still have another character. So let's go ahead and steamroll through Thomas Jefferson, who I'm surprised you said, because I feel like he has a small role, but so much personality in that role. So I'm really excited to hear what you think.
Very much a showstopper. Mr. Thomas Jefferson. If you've gotten to this point and you're a little confused, you may be asking yourself, what did I miss?
It's a song. You're probably this episode is very cheeky lines heavy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. If you are unfamiliar with the musical Hamilton, then you may think that we talk very strangely. But Thomas Jefferson is an ambassador to France, and then he returns after the Revolutionary War. I believe he's offered a position in the cabinet and becomes Secretary of State, but that is 100% from just recently re-listening to the musical. I don't pretend to know anything about history. I'm very much on the opposite side of Rajana too. She's like, I'm talking way too much about the historical figures. I have like too many historical facts. I am very much like, I think he mentions this in verse 2 of What Did I Miss? But he is also one of Hamilton's most passionate opponents. He is like diametrically opposed to him in a lot of different ways. They disagree on just about everything. However, he's very opinionated, and he's always been very vocal about his opinions and about what he believes in. And that is what causes Hamilton to endorse Jefferson against Burr later on. He says, I have never agreed with Jefferson once, but he has beliefs and Burr has none. And so like Hamilton has greater respect for Jefferson for like voicing what he believes, even though he is a constant opponent of his, than Burr, who just tries to kind of make friends with everyone.
Absolutely.
And so he's also very much, as you mentioned, like a showstopper. He's a showman. He is like big and bright and loud. And so I'm interested to hear what you think he is, because I feel I have a better sense of Jefferson than I did of Lafayette.
Yeah. So I think that Jefferson is either an 8 or a 3. I think that he is very passionate about where he's at. I personally do not agree with pretty much anything he did or like how he was as a founding father. And so like I might like think of him differently than how he actually was. Again, the history thing. But as Thomas Jefferson is a character, I think he's incredibly competitive. He wants to go for, and I think it's like, it's hard because he's painted as the antagonist, as the villain of this series. But if he were not, and he was seen as a hero, like we might not see him in the same light, right? So like we see him like cutting all corners to get whatever he can, but we also see Alexander doing that and we don't like hate him for it, right? Because he's like finding scandals about Hamilton in order to try to further his own positions. And so I think that's where it gets a little complicated. I think that could be both a 3, because 3s are just so competitive, 1 would really win, but 8s are so justice seeking. I think it just depends on like what his motives are. And I don't think we get to see that in the show. So that's where I'm having like a little bit of a tricky time with it. But then like, as you say, you said that he's a showman. But yeah, he is. And I think that's what kind of lends me to the 3 as well. Like everything's over the top. Like he was in France and he like was doing just, they say getting high with the French, but like, I think that means both in an aristocratic way and like physically smoking probably. I don't know. But like he literally was like, he was a smoozer, and they sent him there to be like international relations and to like be all over people and like get them to be on their side. And the thing that's interesting though is that he like wants to fight again for France, and he wants to aid the French in their own Revolutionary War, which lends me to almost think it's the 8, because it's like he hasn't like thought it all through. It doesn't necessarily give any glory to America, and that's ultimately he loses that battle. So I think I land on the 3. I think he's probably wing 4 just because he's so dramatic, and also he just isn't a wing 2.
Okay. I like where you're at, mainly because I think I have a different number, but I think I might be able to get you to agree with me.
Okay. Yeah,
just because
let's hear it.
I think some of what you were saying like aligns with where I was at. The 2 numbers that I did have written down were the 3 and the 7.
Okay.
Actually, kind of similarly to what I was talking about with Lafayette, but I would say between the 3 and the 8, and maybe this is just me like thinking too much about some of our past conversations, but I think he is very much like Alexander. I think he's more like Alexander than he is like Burr. And I think that's where I'm like, I think like at his core, he is more like the type 8, and like Alexander like recognizes that like those similarities in him and respects him for that. More so, the reason he doesn't respect Burr, I think, has a lot to do with the way that Burr operates in the world as type 3. So of your 2, I would think I lean more towards the 8. However, where I was thinking about the 7, and I think you were talking about this a little bit, like, yes, I said he's the showman, like he is very, but you were talking about like those dramatics, the over the top, like I think that's very type 7. And he goes to France. He's having a great time in France. He's rubbing elbows. He's making friends. Like he is like, I think that high energy of the 7, he's having fun. And he also, I think, enjoying himself, you know, like when he, and so for me, I saw him as that 7 wing 8, where he has like that fire and he like likes to have a little fight and a little challenge. But I see him more between the 7 and the 8, whether maybe we come to a compromise on the 8 wing 7, or we, agree on the 7 wing 8. That's over where I see him more so personally. What do you think?
I would say he's definitely an 8 over a 7. I think he goes to war like too many times, like with people who he knows he would lose against, and like you know what I mean, like to be a 7, like he fights, he's a challenger, like he knows Hamilton has everyone on their side, and he comes back. All these people have fought in the war, and he still thinks he has everybody's favor, and then he gets it, which also like. Honestly, I'm not against the 3 still. Like, I think he's that charmer, and the fact that, like, how hard he must have had to work to get everyone to trust him over the people who fought in the war. And he still became president and, like, really did some amazing things, you know, whether we like it or not. And like, I don't know. So I kind of am stuck on the 3.
Interesting.
I just think he's a 4 because it's just like, it's dramatic. Like he's just dramatic, and like he wears the purple coat, and his like his songs are like out of order. Like, or like everything else is very like hip hop inspired. He's very like jazzy. I feel like that's so 4. Like he's like different than everyone else. And I think he's a little emotional. He gets a little sensitive when Hamilton affects him.
I don't know.
But I also like, I'm like, I wish we like came together on the 8, but honestly, your points made me further dig my feet in on the 3.
It's so funny because all of your like points about like the 4 and the dramatics and standing out are also like, I'm just like, that's very 7 to me because I don't see the emotions as much. Saying that he's like very like sensitive and emotional like does not resonate with me. Like I think he's much, I
just think 7s are fun because they're go with the flow. I don't think they feel the need to like stand.
But that's where I would say he would be the 8 wing 7.
But I just need more convincing on the 8 than the.
Well, I think, and you mentioned it too, but just like his like brashness, his willingness to like go into a fight that he knows he's going to lose because it's the right thing to do, or like he's very justice oriented. Whether it be just like his willingness to push back instead of like concede and compromise. Like he wants things to go his way.
And that's where it's tricky because I think I'm like, is he justice oriented or does he just want to win? Because I said that and then I was thinking about it and I'm like, I wonder if he actually, and that's where I like prefaced it with, I do not agree with Thomas Jefferson politically like at all. Obviously, it's a very long time ago. But I'm like, did he just want to win, or did he actually believe in what he was doing was right? So I will concede just on the fact that I might be being prejudiced based on like political agenda.
I see what you're saying about like the justice thing. You know, it's I hate to throw a wrench in the works. As you were making your like concession, I was like, you know what? I could see the 3. Like I could see the and then you were like, so I can concede to the 8. And I was like, wait, actually, like I think you convinced me.
I have a good point. Yeah.
You do. No, and I think like not just the motivation of like wanting to win, but you're right that he is like the charmer in the way that 3s are. It is interesting to me also to look at like the 2 sides of the 3, like him being a little bit more action oriented, I think, than Burr is.
And something that's like interesting is like he was really competitive with Burr, and him being in second, he was like, you're not going to be a vice president just because you're in second place. Like he was the last one to do that because he changed that law. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's a very like 3, like, we're still competitive. Like, this was personal. That's why I mean he's a little sensitive. Like, he just like makes things personal when they don't need to be, like across the board, which I think is like the manipulation of like the 4 with the 3.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because
I can see that.
Yeah, because it's like, have you forgotten about Lafayette? And he's like, Lafayette is like my best friend. Please stop. So first of all. Second of all, no, but that's just like not rational right now. But he's like willing to throw anything in there to win, which I think is a little bit 3. Love you guys. Love you besties out there, 3s.
No, okay.
So,
I like that.
3
I like
wing
that.
4?
I'll take the 3 wing 4. I will take it. Oh my gosh. We made it.
Wow, we really did.
Our first musical.
And it was so fun. And this one was so much fun because we could quote like exactly what happened in the musical.
Yes, I know the lyrics a lot, or the words and the phrases a lot more so because I have listened to and sung along to this soundtrack endless times.
So many times. I know. This was so fun. I want to do one more time, one last time, but I know we can't. So maybe one day when we finally do extra episodes, we'll be able to talk through some of those extra characters.
Yes.
Okay, Lucas. Next week is one of our all-time favorites, literally, in like so many different shapes and forms and like reasons of being. Why don't you tell us what we're going to do next week?
We are going to Delta Nu, and we are going to be talking...
Delta Nu.
We're going to be talking about Legally Blonde. And honestly, you and I, we had this conversation about, okay, are we talking about Legally Blonde the movie? Are we talking about the Legally Blonde the musical? I'm going to be honest. I think the answer is just both. So if you're looking to do homework, watch them both. They're both incredible and they're both beautiful and very similar. So we're just going to be talking about these characters in all their different ways, shapes, and forms. Who are we talking about?
We are talking about Elle, Emmett, Paulette, and we might get to a special sneaky side character.
Can't wait. We will see you next week.
See you next week.
Thank you for listening to Typecasting. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at TypecastingPod, where you can vote in our weekly polls. Leave a review and be sure to join us next week when we take on more pop culture by the numbers.
And she like dies, like, right at like 16 or something in real life.
I didn't know she was that young.
Yeah, super young. And she saves the baby of the Schuylers. There's like a 1-year-old little girl, and the house like burns down, and it's like a crazy story. I don't really remember the details, but
it sounds like
it stops spoiling This Is Us.
But...
All right.
I don't know if I should laugh because she was a real person.
Yeah, you stop laughing. You're laughing. I was like surprised. I'm laughing at the fact that you're laughing.
Sorry.